Have a discussion on India Latin America relations, and all those students, master's degree students who are studying Latin American course, this will be very beneficial. She has made a good contribution by way of the writing and publishing. She has published. She has taught in several universities in Colombia. Now I invite Suraya to make her presentation.
Thank you, Professor Gopal. Well, we are going to speak about the India-Latin American relations, but we are not going to speak about numbers. We are going to speak about the quality of our process of integration between India and Latin American countries. We are going to speak about the benefits of the relations for both parts of the equation, India and Latin American countries. The economic relations are growing since the beginning of the century, from 2000, and powerful countries like India and China emerge, and they start to demand raw materials. The amount of investment going from India to Latin American countries have grown, also the trade, and also the issue of visas for business. Indian businessmen that are looking opportunities in Latin American countries. We say that the relation is not sufficient. The participation of Latin American countries in the Indian exports are very low. Same happened with the participation of Latin American countries in the imports from India. And what is worse, the participation of Latin American countries, the number of products that we export to India is also very limited if we compare with other countries and regions. Also happened that the participation of Asia in the trade of Latin American countries is growing. Meanwhile, the participation of Latin American countries in the trade of Asia is less. So how is our trade? Our trade is mainly depending on raw materials. So for instance, the exports of Argentina to India are 90% vegetable oil and soy. The exports of Chile to India are mainly copper, 92%. The exports of Brazil to India are mainly sugar and oil, 80%. The exports of Colombia to India are oil and coal in 90%. And the exports of Mexico, that is the country that has diversified more the goods that are exported, that is exported to India, are basically combustible and mobile phones. And Venezuela, of course, is exporting more oil as a whole. And there are some economists and international organizations like Asian Development Bank and Inter-American Development Bank, then in the last studies that they have done assert that there is not any problem for Latin America to export raw materials. And they have very important reasons. First, the dependency path that we live in the 60s and the 80s, because the market in Latin America has been diversified and is modern now. Also, they say that anyway, the dynamisms of the relations between both countries is because the production is complementary. We export raw materials, you need it, and we import manufactured goods that we need. Also, they have measured that the turning point in the Asian demand of commodities is going to be there for at least 35 to 50 years. So Latin American countries have guaranteed their markets in Asia for 3 decades. But in the research that we are doing with Professor Gopal, we argue that it's very dangerous to estimate the future Asian demand of commodities just based on pure economic projections, income and growth, and economic growth in Asia. And also that it's dangerous to estimate the future of new economic powers like India and China from a linear perspective, ignoring geopolitical situations, social conflicts, and environmental issues. India and China are located in non-stable neighborhoods. We have seen that there are many conflicts, religious conflicts in the area. Also, we see that we have different political issues that we have to take into account in these situations. For instance, the relation of India with Pakistan, the relation of India with Nepal and Bangladesh, the relation of India with Sri Lanka. Those are conflicts that South American, Latin American countries have to take into account, not only thinking about the growth of the demand for raw materials. These situations can't produce the fall of commodity prices, and it will be a big problem for Latin America. But also, in spite of what international institutions and economics are saying, Latin American countries are looking for a more inclusive growth and for a more inclusive development. It happens, for instance, today in Brazil and in Argentina. So we have found that Latin America and Indian companies are building other kind of economic relations based more on investment and linking up international chains of value. For instance, we have in the aeronautical industry one big example. Embraer, that is a Brazilian company, has made an agreement, a technological agreement with the Minister of Defense of India to produce a new model. Embraer was producing this kind of airplanes for the VIPs in Asia, and now they are improving the model to following the requirements of the Defense Minister of India to include a new technology for satellites in India. The model is being proved in New Delhi today. They have 4 new airplanes for the military forces in India. And in this process, we're participating at the aeronautical sector, the engineer and electronic sectors, the companies that develop new materials and services for the industry. So we have a different kind of integration process between India and Latin American sector. So we ask why countries and private sectors are not more concerned about the creation of international chains of value between these two continents. And in the research, we found that we have a big lack of knowledge about Latin American situations and Indian situations. The knowledge that we have, both parts, is very charged of stereotypes. We have always partial information. And finally, private sectors leave a comfortable situation exporting only raw materials, and also there is a comfortable situation for the policymakers to say that we don't have problems because we have guarantee of demand for the next 3 decades. So we found, for instance, that academicians from India that are teaching issues related with Latin America have never been in Latin America, and they don't speak Spanish. So, like you. So the sources that they read are always in English from Latin Americanists that are living in US or Europe. So the information that arrived to India is not a clear information. It is not a complete information about the reality that Latin American countries are living. It started to change. This situation started to change in the year 2008. At the beginning, when we were looking for information about India-Latin American relations, we couldn't find any book updated. But in 2008, many international organizations like the International Development Bank or some organizations in India start to study the relations more carefully. But in South America, it started because they need to explain what happened with India, why India was growing and Latin American countries that are more open to the economy were not growing in that much. So they start to research the process of India. And also because they need to prove why India is not going to be manufacturing power. And also because it's needed to prove what is the role of Latin American countries in this new context. Before, these organizations were more related with China. So in all universities that we visit last month with Professor Gopal, 10 universities, they have a centers of studies, of Asian studies, but they are mainly studied China, not India, nor any other country. And we say that there is a lack of information because even today, after these researches, because they try to explain, but not in the way that Latin Americans can understand what is happening in India, for instance. They say that India is growing because it's industrial transformation, and it is true. But what means industrial transformation for Latin America? We ignore, for instance, that India has always a strong relations in commerce with Europe, always. Even before the British arrived, you have relations with Europe and by different means. Also, these studies say that development of IT services in India is one of the reasons why you are nowadays a very important economy. But we don't know which were the roots of those developments. We don't know, for instance, that the military industry was a very important issue in the development of the IT sector. And what happened with the economy the open of the economy in the 90s? We also opened in the 90s, but it was a different process. Our process in Latin America was deep. The process in India is slow and is very selective. You open some sectors, other sectors of the industry are still closed. The participation of the private sector in many projects is limited. It doesn't happen in Latin America. Also, these studies argue that India is not going to be a powerful country in terms of manufacture, because you have a lack of development in the basic factors such as infrastructure. But when we in Latin America heard that, we don't understand what these books are talking about. Infrastructure. We imagine that you don't have anything. So image like this, Gurgaon, for instance, is not in our mind in India, because for Latin American people, India is ITs or is poverty. So things like this are never in the mind of one Latin American. Also, the kind of transportations that you have that make difficult the traffic in the city are different situations from those that we are living in Latin America. So we know that, for instance, you have 3 million of kilometers in roads, and 2% of them are highways. Any country in Latin America would like to have this kind of improvement in their infrastructure. This is what we show in Latin American countries, in Colombia, to the students. So to see how the red are the projects that has been finished in India during the last 5 years. Also, when we talk about infrastructure in airports, we never imagine that in India we have an airport like the Terminal 3 in New Delhi, or we never imagine that you have this kind of domestic and international airports. But we also ignore about the deficiencies that you have, for instance, in energy, in the transmission of energy, in the delivery of energy. So when we saw that, we never imagined like India is like this. The real situation of India or the real situation of Latin America in different issues. For instance, when these studies talk about the labor cost, we have high cost labor costs in India. If people there, they work for very low salaries. So they don't know that the costs are more related with tradition. that you have 35 holidays, and plus that you have 14 days in which you can avoid to go to the place of work because you have any illnesses, or because you have some casualties like your mother, or happens something to your mother, or your brother is getting married. So these kind of situations are not happening in Latin America, but in India are happening, and they produce high cost in the process. Also, there are costs that comes from traditions. You cannot hire everyone to do everything like in Latin America. I contract one person to do everything in my house, but in India you have to contract many people to do different kind of things because of the caste system or the tradition. So how to achieve long-term and inclusive and well-balanced economic integrations? Added value and linking up to international chains of value are an important solution in a more safe relation for both countries. There are a lot of people talking about this issue. For instance, Obama, the president of US, was talking about added value in the last American summit. And also the Vice Minister Chindia, he was talking about added value in the last assembly of CII. And also organizations like the WTO is talking about added value. And we are going to pass a video to understand.
It is designed in Finland and exported from China to the United States. Thanks to a study made by the Research Institute of the Finnish economy, we can see how this telephone comes together on a global supply chain. This telephone is made of 600 individual components and other inputs such as software licenses. The hardware components account for 33% of the mobile retail price. The software design, mainly licenses and copyrights, represent 4% of the retail price. 47% of this price is due to research and administrative tasks. The actual assembly of the telephone accounts for only 2% of the total value. And other tasks, mainly distribution and retailing, represent 15% of the final price paid by the consumers. Now, let's observe where the value added comes from. Administrative tasks are done in Europe, mainly Finland and the UK. The hardware components are the result of tasks conducted in Europe, Asia, and the United States. The software design comes from Finland, UK, USA, Germany, and Japan. Final assembly and mass manufacturing are done in Finland and China. Other tasks are completed in Finland, the United States, and Asia. If we look at how much value added each part of the world has brought to this process, we get this. Europe has 51% of the value added. This is because it is dominant in the branding, development, design, and administration.
From the beginning it didn't come.
28% of the value added comes from North America, where the phone is sold. 16% comes from Asia, and 5% comes from the rest of the world. The conclusion is that it is very difficult to attribute a nationality to a telephone. Is it Finnish? Is it Chinese? We see that many countries participated in this process, which created employment and income for many people from different nationalities across different regions. But today, the phone appears on trade statistics as being made in China.
After this example, we can give some examples of international change of value between India and Latin American countries. For instance, between Brazil and India, in the framework of IPSA and BRICS, we have some of those projects. Aerospace industry. The three countries in the framework of IPSA are producing 2 satellites that have to be launched in 2013 and 2015. Why? Because those three countries have experience in this kind of technology. In the framework of BRICS, in the last summit of BRICS in New Delhi, the 5 countries approved this project, that is an interoceanic telecommunication project, being independent from the existing telecom routes that they have to use in the north. So they are building a new interoceanic telecommunication project that is starting in Vladivostok in Russia, going to Chennai in India, Shantou in China, Cape Town in South Africa, Fortaleza in Brazil, and that is arriving to Miami because all of those countries are interested in this market. Also, we have a very important example that everybody in India knows, that is the alliance between Tata and Marco Polo. They are producing buses, and those buses are transit in all the BRT system today in 6 countries, in the 6 cities in the country. So this is an important example of articulation between different sectors between Brazil and India. And between Mexico and India, we also have examples. In the cultural industry, for instance, Cinépolis, you must know the company is one of the biggest company in the world, Mexican company, in the projections of cinemas, projections of films. They are planning to build 500 cinema theaters in the country. Today they have 100. And how is the articulation in this process? Real estate companies are helping the Mexican company to identify those places where the cinema can be built. Indian companies are producing corporative software, legal services, designing and adequacy of the establishments, materials and food. Meanwhile, Mexican companies are providing chairs and amenities to this industry. So there is a different articulation, different from raw materials. The strategy between Chile and India also is different. Chile is concentrated in the reduction of barriers for agricultural products and also for mining services. And in that regard, they are working hardly with the government of India in the subscription of a free trade agreement. Chile has signed more than 53 free trade agreements with different countries. They are working, for instance, Chilean companies in the participation of the Indian paper industry, because you are going to grow in this industry and you are not going to be sufficient in the supply of paper for your own country. So Chile wants to participate. Chile is a big producer of paper. India and Colombia also have examples of international chains of value in the hydrocarbon sector, linking up professional services, oil industrial services, and they have built, in some cases with some companies, joint ventures to participate in national projects. Also, there are important examples in Colombia in the ethanol industry. Prash Industries is there with Imecol, that is a Colombian company, and they are building ethanol plants. In the automotive sector, also, we have important alliances between Auteco and Bajaj, and some other companies from Colombia, and Hero and TVS, that are also in the automotive sector. Also, we have important examples in biofarm. There is a Colombian company that together with an Indian company are producing a new vaccine that is only to be used in India. And in food processing, we also have examples of Colombian companies working here in India in beverage and in goods for kids. In the housing area, housing for low-income people, Colombia is doing some alliances with Indian companies to provide more than India is going to need 25 million of new houses during the next 2 decades. So Colombia wants to be part of those projects. And we have also in the south of India, in Chennai, a Colombian company that is working in management of solid waste. So it's translated the knowledge that we have acquired in this kind of public services. So what we say is that raw materials are an important opportunity for Latin American countries, but policymakers and private sectors have the responsibility to promote added value exports and linkage to international change of value. to guarantee a deeper and long-term economic integration between India and Latin American countries.
Thank you, Suraya, for very good presentation on India and Latin American relations. As you pointed out, historically, prior to British came, we had a relation with the Europe, and our contact was, geopolitically, India is totally different today. What was, we had a direct route travel up to, the whole Europe. Our people have gone for centuries, but the geopolitical changes led to, slowing down not only our economy, but subsequently when the British came, I just want to answer to that question that, they came to trade, but they played politics and they captured, and then, we became, almost their colony for 200 years.
I would like to ask you something.
Yeah.
After your visit to Colombia and your first visit to Latin America, what do you think about the social life and the political life in Latin American countries and the quality of life in our region?
India is a very diverse society, and like your country, you have huge internal problems. We also have, but social life is concerned, as far as my impression. I think in a democratic country, it's a very I think it's a society is integrated socially. If a society is integrated, then there is opportunity for development. The process of development is taking place, and as far as India is concerned, the Indian society is integrated culturally, but the development process has hurdle, and as you pointed out, there are regional factors, there are caste factors, and there are the hurdles as far as planning is concerned. We have to first address the issue of Mahatma Gandhi dreamed of India. He propagated for the the village republic. The most important is you clean up villages, you build villages. Why only universities in Delhi and big cities? Why not you have a from school to the university in a village? You make your village self-sufficient, and then automatically India becomes self-sufficient, and you can make India stronger and bigger. I think we have a greater opportunity to learn from the experiences. Your country is small, but you have made it more beautiful in the sense that you have cared for development. Hopefully we will also be developing much faster scale. Thank you very much.
Thank you.